Hell yeah. So
Well, here
uh,
we are, man.
when before you joined, I said that I was going to drop in the clip from the first time we spoke where you and I kind of shared in our incredulity that it had not been released yet. We were both like, "What? Why has this show never been released? It's fucking awesome." And then
Yeah.
you said, well, if you guys are ever going to talk about that show, you should talk about 310 81 as well because that's also a really good show, and I hadn't heard that. Well, the Dead listened. It's Howard's Picks, volumes 1 and 2. 3981 and 310 81. So 39 was your first Dead show, and then you were at 310 as well?
No, I just 3981. I got into Europe 72 about 6 weeks before the show.
Wow.
And I lived about 45 minutes from the garden. So I said, hey, why not go see these guys? I went down with two high school kids who weren't deadheads. They fell asleep during the show. And yeah, it was
What?
a kind of experience. They fully grasped the greatness that night. But I remember walking in on Feel Like a Stranger, and just like it sounded like I was walking into an episode of Hawaii Five-0. It had like that exotic vibe. I didn't even know the song was on Go to Heaven, which I didn't have in my collection yet. And the one thing that put it for me over the top that night was they played my favorite song, Ramble on Rose Fourth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a great version, and just like New York City. So, the Dead have that way of connecting, playing the song you want, and right away you feel like somehow they know you're in the audience and you got that kind of vibe going.
Just like New York City, just like Jericho, raise the hose and climb the walls and get out when they blow. Did you say the name was Rambling Road? Ramble on, baby. Sing it easy. Ramble on the road.
Yeah, amazing. So you grew up on Long Island, right? So do you
Uh,
take
a
no?
suburb. It's Nanuet.
Oh,
Suburb
okay.
of New York City, yeah.
Right on. So yeah, not a far trip at all. You got to just get on the train and get into
Yeah.
the garden.
Yeah, it was a cool experience. But by the time my next show was, I had bootleg tapes and everything, so I was a little more advanced.
Yeah, you said when we first talked to you, you didn't have like the language down for that first show. And
Yeah,
so it was your next show that you went in armed and dangerous, ready
yeah,
to know everything.
the
Okay.
terrain. When I first heard the tape of 3981, the Garden Show, it was about a month after the show, and I was starting to collect bootlegs. My friends played it for me, and I heard that Althea. I was like, oh my god, I was actually there for that. Like, but at that point, when I heard it a month later, I actually was much more advanced in listening to the music.
There are so many songs in this show where I listen to it and I'm like, this is one of the great X. Like they just played so well. It's shocking that your friends fell asleep during this show of all shows because there is so much energy. You can feel it when you're just like even listening to it through the tape.
Yeah,
Um,
well, they definitely weren't deadheads. I was the most. I kind of dragged them along to come with me.
yeah, I've been there for concerts before too. Like I know you don't know this band, but it's going to be a good time. Just come with.
Yeah,
My mom actually fell asleep during Space in Hartford this summer. But Dead and Co Space is a very different thing than the Dead in 81 at MSG. The
yeah.
tempos are all different. The sound is different. So I think I can cut her maybe a bit more slack on that
Yeah,
one.
and I got to admit to one time falling asleep at Dead and Co show, Dead and Co show.
Yeah,
So,
those tempos will get you. um, okay, so I have so many. I really just want to know everything about the experience of going to 39. But because you said that your next show you had some more tapes, so when was the second show after 3981?
it was Nassau Coliseum '81,
Oof.
and we're really looking forward to that show because it was the anniversary of Cornell too. It was 4 years after Cornell, the great Cornell show, and that was a pretty good show. But the great show that tour of that Nassau Coliseum run happened to be May 6th, where they did that He's Gone and the Caution Spanish Jam.
Yeah,
So
man.
yeah, but the 5A was good. But man, my first show, looking back on it, like just falling in love with the tape. Right off the bat, you feel like a stranger in Althea. I'd say those are like the two of the best versions ever of those songs. You know, it's top three versions both.
I think
They're,
it's the best feels like a stranger. I don't think they ever played it better than that night. Honestly, it's so goddamn good.
hey, just to throw one out there, so for future reference for you, check out November 10th, 1985, Brendan Byrne. They ended the set with that, and it was a smoking show, and just the fact that they ended the set with it they brought the house down with that one.
Yeah, I'll check that out. You know, they haven't really done many live releases that have Stranger on them. It's
Yeah,
like, I mean, they're obviously like between Dick's Picks and Dave's Picks, there aren't a ton of 80s releases. And so it makes sense that there wouldn't be that many with Feels Like a Stranger, but this is this is a great song and a great way to open the show too.
and
So I wish they did more.
yeah, I was going to say with the jam, it's a very interesting jam. When they hit it, I mean, it could be as exciting as any song the Dead played. Like when they hit it, it was off the hook. But some nights it was, they kind of like, they tried, but they really didn't hit it. It's a tough song to
Yeah.
actually building momentum and hit that amazing jam. So yeah, they definitely rocked it out on the garden. Like every layer of it was perfect. It connected perfectly. Another cool thing about that garden show is just the sound of Garcia's guitar. Very unlike any other show. I don't know the technical aspects of what he did to his guitar that night, how it was tuned and all that, but it's quite noticeable that there's a different, like, piercing, razor sharp sound to his guitar that night.
Yeah. Even compared to the next night, it's noticeable on a bunch of songs too. I mean, really, I mean, just throughout the show. Yeah. I'd be curious to talk to someone who is more aware of, I guess, the tuning intricacies and, sound effects and stuff to hear what they would say about why. But yeah, it sounds great. So wait,
Yeah, yeah.
how old were you for this first show? If you don't want to age yourself,
No.
that's fine.
Happy to let you know. I think I was 17, almost 18. I
Okay,
was
cool.
closing in on 18. Another interesting aspect of the show is like in history where it ended up. Um, if you look back, December of '80, John Lennon's murdered in New York. This was, I think, a few weeks maybe after Reagan was assassinated. So it was like a really strange part of history where the Garden Show ended up. And I just think this was a time where people kind of flocked to the Dead. The '70s was over, like kind of like the dream was done, and the Dead were like that kind of oasis for people who were still looking for that music. Even though the Who had the situation in Cincinnati with the people getting killed coming in, so rock and roll was really going through a tough period, and the Dead was something that people could latch on to that like kind of held the hope and promise of that period.
Yeah. That's really
Wow.
interesting. I was just talking to one of my uncles this summer about, he was saying that he thinks that when Lennon was assassinated was when the '70s officially ended. He was like, it might have been over for a year, but I think that was the moment where it was undeniable that the vibe that was there when I was a teenager, when he was a teenager in the '70s, that was over once Lennon died. It was like, okay, well, we can't ignore it anymore. Um, so it's interesting that you said that too.
Yeah, it goes like it permeates the albums that came out. The albums weren't as great anymore, cutting edge, but especially like going to concerts, believing in something. That's where people just kind of flocked to the Dead. It was something to grab onto that was authentic, that held on to that feeling from the '60s and '70s, and style and sound and everything.
Yeah. In rock and roll specifically too, because you had some real authenticity in like the punk scene, but in rock and roll we were about to enter this like very false era with hair bands and shit like that, where it's just like the music might sound great, but it doesn't feel real. There's not the warts and all aspect. There's not like these people out there just kind of bearing their souls for the audience in the same way.
Yeah, even like Rolling Stones albums, they were really good, but not as good as Some Girls and the earlier ones, the Sticky Fingers and all that. It seemed like every group had a little bit of a drop off. The Who, they were still putting out good stuff, but not what it was before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Who with like, you compare Tommy and Quadrophenia and Who's Next in the early '70s to in the early '80s, it's like, okay, well, Eminence Front is a cool song, but the rest of that album is like pretty forgettable.
Yeah. Masterpieces versus good music.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So okay, so you make the pilgrimage, you get into the garden, see the show. You said that you didn't have all of the vocab, but how many songs do you remember, like how many you recognized off the bat? Obviously Ramble on Rose.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And then Minglewood Blues, and I think they had just come out with Reckoning, so Deep Ellum I might not have got. I knew LP.
Mm,
So the second set, I knew Cat Rider, Samson. I knew all the songs, but it was strange for me in my first show because everything that night they put the extra effort into, and
yeah.
everything long. Even going estimated until the Johns, the passages were so long. And we didn't even have good weed that night. So I'm sitting up there. I'm kind of enjoying it. The gardens going nuts, but I don't have great seats either. So I got to admit that I was identifying songs, and but I couldn't really grasp the magnitude of that night. But the second set, just has some killer stuff. The Cat Rider might be the best one from that decade. It's exceptionally long. The China Cat. It's like he doesn't go for the jugular right away. A lot of jamming, and the rider is incredible. Where they really hit the rider in stride. So it's when I listen back to that, I'm like, maybe the best show of 1981.
I think it is. I think it's one of the best shows of the decade, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. There's so much to it. It's a great Cat Rider, Samson, Ship of Fools, Estimated Uncle John's. It's a beautiful pre-drums. So
Yeah.
And another cool thing about that was seeing Deep Ellum electric. I forget the exact numbers, but I think they only played it electric a certain amount of times, 6 or 7 times. I happened to catch 3 of them.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was going to parlay that into the fact with they played Estimated Uncle John's, so I didn't see my first eyes for 22 shows, first eyes of the world.
You told us that last time. Yeah. They played any other song besides Eyes.
Uncle John's. So I caught Estimated everything but Eyes for a while. So lucky in Deep Ellum, not lucky in Eyes.
Fair. So you also, I just looked it up. You hit the nail on the head. Exactly 6 times that they played electric. So,
yeah.
And this was the first. They had never played electric before this night. So you saw the debut. Unprecedented at that point. Dave, do you have what questions do you have?
I kind of want to know, I want to hear about the atmosphere of the garden and also like the pre-show atmosphere. Like you said, you walked in on Feels Like a Stranger, like you showed up right on time.
Yeah, we took a bus in from Port Authority, walked to Madison Square Garden. So this was part of, I missed the whole pageantry. The garden, usually you would have to create your own scene, go to a local bar. A lot of the garden shows I went to, we go to these bars on 31st and 8th. I think it was called Smith's. And there were all the Blarney Rocks down there. So it wasn't as much a scene as other places, but there was deadheads filled every bar, and the bartenders were playing dead music. For my first show, I had none of that. So I had the best show to work off of, but I didn't have the pageantry of what it more normally might be. But yeah, the power of the garden is incredible. I remember October 12th, 1983 was the night after St. Stephen. They played in the garden, and they started the second set with Help on the Way. I just went behind the band and I looked out and I saw what they were looking at. It was just
That's neat.
Bouncing to the best Help slip Franks you'll ever hear. And you could just see how the band would be so excited playing in that atmosphere. It was definitely incredible. That it was those years and all the shows that came out on that recent Dave's Picks. Just brilliant. It's a Dave's Picks, am I correct?
It's just a different box set. Yeah, it's like a standalone. It's called In and Out of the Garden. This is kind of a good parlay into this amazing project that you're undertaking right now and why you got caught in DC traffic. You're retracing your own steps from the Fall 83 tour that included that night that you just mentioned at the Garden. So beginning in Harrisburg and then Richmond, or was that just
Yeah, it's beginning of Richmond. The Harrisburg was just because I had been there before. I went to on my way to Richmond. I said, hey, why not stop off at Harrisburg? I hadn't been there since I seen them there like 38 years earlier. But the first show of the Fall 83 tour is Richmond, and I'm currently in Richmond. I made it. I didn't think I would. I made it in traffic jam coming over here. I'm still traumatized, but
yeah.
yeah. So that Fall 83 tour was so great that I wanted it. The best way to kind of recapture it, I'm going to every venue. I'm gonna either get in the venue and listen to the show in the venue, or parking lot, whatever I gotta do. Put on headphones, walk around the place. Richmond venue is actually going to be knocked down. It's on its last legs. It's not even open anymore.
Wow.
So, yeah, I'll see what happens when I get there. I think it's fenced off or something. So I might go in the parking lot there and just take out a Bose speaker and listen to it, or do it by headphones. But I think that the thing of doing the tour, as well as getting into the mood with the music, is actually doing the tour. There's something about doing a road trip. And I kind of miss that, having that passion where you got to drive to Richmond, you got to drive to Greensboro. It means that much to you that you're willing to do it. I just wanted to retrace what that felt like too, and putting up with the crazy traffic jams like I had to today. But stuff you see along the way is priceless. But back in the day, we were so focused on the Dead and getting to the parking lots, seeing all that. I didn't have enough time to take in, the city and the other things. So hopefully on this trip, I'll see some things that I didn't see 39 years ago.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. That's such a cool pursuit, and that's a great perspective to bring to it. Of like, and I'm going to do this and hear the music and be, retrace my step, recapture that feeling of being on the road, but also see these cities. You get to see all those, cobblestone streets in Richmond that you probably didn't even notice the first time you were there.
I'm sure. But yeah, it also gives me time to just to reflect back on all the touring things and how life has changed, how the music still. I mean, to me, it's the same as it was. Maybe even it's more important than it was when I was seeing it, which is almost hard to believe that I'm sitting here. That it means that much to me. 39 years that I'm going to do it, and I think the cool thing about the project is people go to museums. What happens in a museum? Nothing. You're not listening to anything. You're not experiencing anything. You're looking at a freaking thing on a wall. This is more real. I think it's a very cool way of doing it. It's like people who like the baseball stadium, going to see every baseball stadium. Hopefully I start something here where more people do this kind of thing. Go to see venues on the anniversary day where they saw shows, and it's a great way to really kind of relive the whole thing.
Yeah. So was the first time you did that with Cornell this past May, or had you done it before?
I did it, but I also did it a few years back. I was writing my Grateful Dead '77 book.
Therapy Nation.
That's really where the whole thing started. So I said, hey, let me go see this place, Barn Hall. And I went up there, man. I got up there. I felt like Richard Dreyfuss in Third Encounters. It was like I was drawn. I didn't even have to ask anybody where Barn Hall was. I just got out of the car and started walking towards it. And hey, the coolest thing about Barn Hall is you could walk right into the place. The doors are unlocked. I picked up a basketball. I'm playing basketball in Barn Hall, and I Bose speaker and listen to the entire show in there.
Yeah, that's so cool.
I won't be able to do that at Madison Square Garden this year, but I don't think so. That was one of the cool things about the Barn Hall, man. So it was just, you walk in there like you own the place.
Man, I hope that they'll let you do that at the Greensboro Coliseum. I don't know if you've been there, Dave, but he and I both went to school so close by. You would know better than we would, Howard, because you've seen a show there, but it's an interesting little place. It's not in like downtown Greensboro, but it is a big ass venue. It would be cool to get in there. I
think what might be the biggest is the biggest indoor coliseum or arena. I think it might be. It's either first or second.
Yeah, big enough that that's where the Carolina Hurricanes played when North Carolina stole that franchise from my beloved home state of Connecticut. But wow. That's a story from a different day.
One of the cool sports related thing from Greensboro when I was there in '83, NC State had just had the miracle run to the championship that year. Now I'm a Maryland fan because I was born in Maryland. I didn't live there long, so it didn't even mean anything to me back then. I knew it was an incredible run by NC State. But now I'm like a huge Jim Valvano fan, and I've looked at what they did. So it's kind of cool for me to go back to Greensboro. And the Grateful Dead, as they often do. They didn't mention it. They didn't say it as they were playing, but they opened up with Shakedown Samson in Greensboro, and they replaced Samson second. So Samson was obviously Weir's gesture at Tennessee State for pulling off the miracle championship run.
God, that's so cool. That is a very subtle thing, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, man.
Yeah, like when Kansas City won the World Series, Weir dedicated Kansas City, obviously, to the champions. And one time the Dodgers won or lost, and he did a baby blue for them. You get these sports references every now and then that shows.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, so you hit something earlier about like the road trip kind of sweetening the experience. And I've been trying to kind of grapple with this. And I think that you might maybe be able to help me understand it a little bit more. This past summer, I saw 3 Dead and Co shows, and it's different, obviously, than like, you in 83 or the 85 trip that you told us about the last time we talked. Being on the road, hitting all those shows, having to sell everything you owned just to get back home. But when I traveled to Cincinnati to see a show at a venue that you hit in that 85 trip, Riverbend, I
Great.
felt, yeah, awesome venue. So cool. And just like it poured that night, and then it stopped right when the show was starting, and it made for this gorgeous sunset right over the venue. But that show, traveling there and then traveling to Citi Field from North Carolina to see the last show of the tour at Citi, compared to the show that I saw in Hartford when I was in Connecticut with my family, we just drove the hour up to see it. I feel like those 2 shows in New York and Ohio, I like cherish more in my heart. I think back on them so fondly because of the sacrifices and the hassle that it took to get there. And I had not thought about that. In my mind, I kept thinking like, oh, well, Cincinnati, it's the Midwest. People might be a little bit more friendly than they are in Hartford. And then New York, obviously a super heady city where the energy there is just different. But now that I think about it, I think that it might be related to that experience of I'm getting out on the road and I'm traveling somewhere. I'm doing something to see this. I'm curious how you feel about that.
Yeah, it's the committing to something you love that just adds another dimension to it, another sense. Like when I took that trip to Cornell on the anniversary, I was like, this is the missing piece. It's like I got to do a road trip and create a Dead tour, because there's just something about going to these different just you're putting in the effort. The Grateful Dead are out there doing their thing, but you're doing your part, putting in the effort in. It's so much more rewarding, and the experiences you come away with are incredible. So for me, the cool thing about the upcoming tour is it's going to be double rewarding, because I'm going to reflect back on what I did in '83, and there's going to be these new experiences. So I'm going to have like a parallel, transcending kind of road trip going on, where I'm reflecting, plus I'm creating the new experiences. And I have the shows, I have the music, so that part's kind of cool. So yeah, it's an interesting project. Hopefully, it turns into a Twilight Zone thing where you never see me again, and I kind of escape. I'm kind of hoping for.
You go just in a loop back to '83, just reliving those shows over and over.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be great for you, but I really want to read this book, man. So
yeah, so no, don't let that happen, please.
Yeah, I just finished listening to all of the shows from the East Coast run in '72 on their dates where they were released. I enjoyed doing it so much for Europe '72 that I did it again for this tour, and there's some great ones. But you telling me about what you're gonna do is gonna make me listen to all the '83 shows, and I'm really excited to get into it. And I'm excited to maybe next year or whenever the book comes out, relive it again through your writing. So you've inspired something in me too.
That '72 tour, man, the September '72, you can't get better shows than that.
My God.
The Philly Spectrum, the Stanley Theater, Waterbury. It's just God. Like and they played every song's great. They played everything full tilt. It was that's an incredible run. I got a chance to listen to a couple of them during that. But yeah, I have a friend who like cherishes that '72 stuff so much. It's but the '83 stuff, yeah, it's unique in its own way. One of the cool things about the '83 run, which I'm doing, is there's a three night run, or starting with the Garden where they do the St. Stephen, which was pretty incredible. But then the next night they played what I consider to be the best Helps of Franks at the Garden. The following night they played what might be the best Scarlet Fire in Hartford from Dick's Pick Six on 10/14/83. And then a couple nights later in Lake Placid, they played one of the best Sugarees you'll ever hear to open the show. So there was something they had something they were locked into something on that '83 tour. They were incredibly hot. And I think Phil, I have to look this up for my own verification for the book I'm writing, but I think Phil even gave a nod to how good the band was playing during that run in 1983 in the fall of '83.
There was a note in the latest Deadcast that when they talked about the Garden shows from 81, 82, and 83, where they said that in 83, that was when Phil got his own mic. And so he could do more supporting vocals on things. And they were saying that they thought that added to just like the sense of fun that the band was having on stage, having Phil back in the mix and performing. And actually, it might have been at the MSG show that he and Bobby shared a mic for a song. And we're singing together, and everyone who they interviewed who was there was like, that was like a super special moment to see them singing together into the same microphone.
It's pretty cool. Whatever they were doing, I didn't see it. I was like, I was probably diagonal from Jerry, just playing air guitar, not even so I didn't happen to see that, but yeah, he did. And then the next year, Phil started singing his own songs again, and he did the Just Like Tom Thumb's Blues, and yeah, so I guess that was the beginning of him getting back into doing a little singing.
Yeah. Dave, do you have more questions? I want to let Howard go pretty soon because it's been a brutal day of travel for the man.
I have two more questions. One of which I don't know if you're allowed to answer, and the other, I think we need from you before we let you go. The one that I don't know because maybe you don't even know. Are you allowed to tell us the working title of your upcoming book project?
Yeah, I'm kicking around so many things. I haven't put it on paper yet, but The Grateful Pilgrimage is
Ooh,
yeah,
I like that.
And then of course, with my books, I'll have a subtitle to go along with it. To me, it's a pilgrimage. It's more than it's more than like music is to me is bigger than religion. I think most people feel that way, whether they say it or not. So doing something like this does feel like a pilgrimage. And even when I'm not at one of the particular shows, I could go visit these places like City Island, Lehigh University. I was at yesterday, and I'm also going to stop by Glens Falls, see all these venues that I saw the Dead at, listen to a couple songs while I'm there. There's something to it. It's great. Nice. It enhances the experience above just listening to it.
That's excellent. I don't know about you, Alex. That's got a thumbs up from me.
For the title?
On the working title. Absolutely.
It's an awesome title. Yeah.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
The Grateful Acts, obviously aspect of it. And it's definitely a pilgrimage. I can't think of any other word that fits it.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Last question for you. We play a game here where after kind of analyzing and diving deep into a show, we like to take one song away from it. Not necessarily the best song of the night, but the song that you feel like you need to take away from the show. So since this is the inaugural Howard's Picks, give us Howard's pick from the show. What one song are you carrying away from this excellent night at MSG?
Yeah, I think it has to be the China Cat. And obviously it goes into Rider. So
you get both. Yeah.
Yeah, you get both.
It's the cat it's incredible. There's also like Brent's sound that night. Once again, you would need the technical expert to tell me what exactly he did with his organ that night, but there was like such a different sound. You could hear it right away on the cat. And there's an audience of that Garden show, and when Jerry hits that first lead, this one girl lets out an orgasmic scream. And sometimes it's the soundboards and recordings, but sometimes you get those audience recordings. They just mean so much. So the audiences and the soundboards that were out there were already pretty good, even though I love the new mastering of it. And then you get into the China Cat, and it's just layer after layer of the band just taking their time, not rushing to the crescendo, kind of doing like a mini crescendo and piling up and going and going. And pretty soon it's longer than a 74 Cat, and everyone knows the 74 or 73 Cats are the best. But this one is just, it's so incredible. It just, it's mind boggling. It's so different than any other cat rider they played from the decade.
Yeah. As you said before, a long one too, more than 9 minutes for this China Cat alone, which is
Yeah.
just
And
great.
that's because whoever's dividing the tracks gives credit to Ryder too soon. It's probably more like 11 minutes. It's always like interesting where you want to divide that. Some people will give more time to the China Cat, some people give more time to the Ryder, and maybe I'm partial to giving the time to the China Cat. To me, it's not Ryder till he starts singing that first line.
That's fair. There's actually some weird cutting up that they do throughout these shows, because the next night where they call space like 3 minutes long, I would argue the entire space is just like a very slow lead into the wheel. It's beautiful. And
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's in the eye of the beholder, like so much of this music, which is a part of the beauty of it. I do want to note one more thing, and then we'll let you go.
Yeah, I got one more. After you say, I got one more thing for you on the 3-9 show. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So actually, two more things then. First and foremost, everyone, if you haven't heard our first episode with Howard, go listen to it. But more importantly, go read his books. Go buy his books. I have read many, I think most of them, most of the 10 at this point. I've read one of his pieces of fiction, COVID Blues, which was released in April and is a great read. So like, please go read that one too, because what it takes to write a novel, I can't even imagine. And so the fact that you've done that, Howard, I said this last time, but it's amazing to me. Please go read that book. It's wonderful. And it's, if you're a Deadhead, you'll really like it. It's about, well, I mean, you could explain it better than I, Howard, but as someone who read it, I will say it's about a band manager. He is managing a Grateful Dead cover band. The lead, force in that band says, I want to do something different. They go out on an amazing journey, to use the Who title.
Yeah, during COVID.
During COVID, hence the COVID Blues, right? And there is heartbreak and love and loss and lots of good stuff in that book. So go read that. First of all. Second of all, because you talked about Ramble on Rose, Dave and I went to, as I said, the City Field shows this summer, and we brought my sister along, who had never really been exposed to the Dead's music, but she was like, if this is something that's important to you, I'm in. And when they played Ramble on Rose, Dave, you'll probably remember this. She was like, oh, I'm all in on this song. And it was the Just Like New York City line where she was like, this is awesome. And so first I wanted to say that, but second, what you were saying about audience tapes, go listen to the audience tape of 3-9 and listen to the audience's moment of recognition when that line hits in Ramble on Rose, Just Like New York City, because man, those moments.
It's like the 9/18/87 Morning Dew, which is heralded. If you listen to a soundboard, you get it, but you don't really get it. If you listen to an audience of that, man, it's just that was the loudest, I think, and most emotional Madison Square Garden I've ever seen it for anything. And just when you hear it, like you could viscerally feel it when you listen to the audience. Yeah, so sometimes the audience tapes tell the real story.
Yeah, amazing. So, I mean, I just would again say, everyone, although these new masterings are great, and there are some other ones like this, a show that we touched about on a little bit last time, one of those 87 Hartford shows, when Jerry had just gotten back, the moment in I Know You Rider, when he hits I Wish I Was a Headline on a Northbound Train. You can hear it in the, Dave's Picks release. It sounds good, but you hear the audience version. It's the first time Jerry's really like given it the gusto with his voice after the coma. And you guys in the audience, you just went nuts. And so like that stuff, it just means so much, and it just hits you differently.
Yeah, that 87 tour was so emotional. And when like Jerry played well, but sometimes he really nailed it, and the crowd was all over it. The second he nailed something like old days, we were like, the man is back. It was like he's gonna play forever. There was like such a great feeling when he really nailed it in '87.
So are you going to be listening to a mix of audiences and soundboards throughout your pilgrimage this year?
Whatever the best version available is. Like, isn't re-listen an amazing tool? It's just
yes.
You have an option, soundboard, and usually I look for the name Charlie Miller, because whether it's an audience or soundboard, it's mixed properly when you see that name. So I usually go to the Charlie Miller version on that. And hey, one other thing about 3-9/81, another cool little sidebar. With the Bird Song, they had played Bird Song at the previous show at Cole Fieldhouse, 3/7/81. It was an 18-minute Bird Song. And so Jerry played the longest bird song ever, and apparently he forgot he played it, and he played it again the next night in Madison Square Garden. Maybe he was just dangling in his head after the 18-minute version, but it's rare to get two bird songs 2 nights in a row, and both of them are pretty amazing.
Yeah, this one is 11 minutes of just absolutely incendiary playing. There's a moment in like the 9 or 10 minute mark or range where it sounds like he's breathing fire through his guitar. It is amazing.
Yeah. Hey, those 81 shows, man, that they had a great new a lot of stuff to work with. The Reckoning songs, which the Jackaroo, Deep Ellum, Direwolf, all these songs they brought electric. Then you have to go to Heaven stuff, which the Alabama Getaways are hot. And Althea was extremely hot in '81, and even like the Rooster CC Rider, people got. I think even Jerry got bored of them as time went on. They weren't that passionate, but like in 1981, these Little Red Roosters are insane. Garcia's just like off the hook as playing. So yeah, 81 is like a very underrated period. I'm glad to see more stuff come out from there.
Agreed. Yeah. Well, Howard, we will let you go. Thank you for joining us today.